Buenas tardes a todos. Thank you. I can also order 2 beers. Good evening. Hello, Madrid. It's been a long day, but hopefully an interesting one. So I've come to talk to you about what's happening in the good old United Kingdom. How many of you have been to the United Kingdom? All of you. I thought we came to you on holiday. Okay. What I hope to do in this session is really 3 things. First, I want to give you an overview of what's happened in the veterinary marketplace in the United Kingdom. I've been asked to do that because I think you'll find there's some similarities with perhaps where you find yourself in Spain today. So we're going to talk about the factors that have influenced the marketplace that we see today in the UK, who are the key players, and where do we see the future challenges? What are the things that we face in the future? And then we want to talk about wellness plans, who benefits, how we measure their success, and more importantly, how we create a successful plan within a particular practice. And we've heard some great advice from Jeffrey and Janine this afternoon about how Banfields, with all their size, have struggled over the years to grasp what for them is the right wellness plan. And that somewhere is the key. We have to find the plan that's right for us. So let's start by looking at what's been happening in the UK. And if we want to look at the veterinary marketplace in the United Kingdom, we have to look back first to a specific year. The year was 1997. And in 1997, the veterinary marketplace in the UK looked like this. There was around 3,500 veterinary practices across the whole of the United Kingdom. And all of them were privately owned. They were owned by one or more of the veterinary surgeons that worked in those practices. Very few of them had more than 1 or 2 branches. Some had 4 or 5, but most were relatively small. Lots of towns and cities were only served by one practice, the local vet. They did all the farm animals, they did all the domestic pets, they did anything, but there was just one. There was little or no competition, even when more than one practice exists. They knew each other. They were friends. They covered for each other when they went on holiday. Yes? Is it like this in Spain? Yeah? We all know each other. We know what we charge because we meet over dinner and tell each other. We come to conferences like this and it's the first question, how's your practice? What do you think the price increase should be this year? Is this how it is in Spain? It's all very friendly. But the powers that be, the government of the day, decided that that wasn't right. The veterinary profession in the UK was seen to be failing its customers. Because in the UK, the veterinary profession is protected by law, by an act of parliament. Only a veterinary surgeon can perform an act of veterinary medicine. You will be sent to prison if you perform an act of veterinary medicine and you're not a veterinary surgeon. So, we have a protected profession. But the government expects something back. They expect that profession to serve its customers well. And the government of the day felt the veterinary profession in the UK was not doing that. It was failing its customers. Why? Firstly, because small veterinary practices are in economic business terms structurally inefficient. They are wasteful. We have expensive pieces of technology that we use very little. We have skilled people whose skills we don't use because of the nature of the size and shape of our practices. lots of the costs become duplicated. We all have the same bits of technology. So if there are 6 vets in the same town, all of them have the same technology. And all of that technology sits there being very little used. A lot of the new technologies which clients wanted to be available to help them and their pets were too expensive for a small practice to buy. That's our challenge. We have these new technologies, but they're not cheap. They're expensive to buy. Clients had little or no choice. If they didn't like their local vets, there was nowhere else to go. They had to come to you whether they liked it or not. And there was limited competition between the vets. And a marketplace to be healthy needs competition. So what did they do? Oh, the supply side, the drug companies, were very big and very powerful when compared to the small veterinary practices. So they could dominate what happened in a veterinary practice. Because where else could the practice go to get the supplies and medicines that it needed? So, all of that implied a number of things. Firstly, there was lots of inefficient use of our labour and our resources. That adds cost. Inefficient use means extra cost. And that means customers are paying too much. Especially the big agricultural ones, the farmers. They were the people who drove for change in the UK marketplace. They said, we can see what's going on here. This is all very inefficient and costly, and we pay the bill. We as customers are not happy, and we want you, our government, to do something about it. So what did they do? Well, the solution was what's known as deregulation. The veterinary profession was deregulated in 1997. And what that meant, firstly, is that veterinary practices could become companies. Up until that point, they had to be a partnership. And a partnership meant that there was a responsibility of the owners and all of the owners' assets into that business. So the prevention of a company meant that the owners could protect their personal assets from the assets of the company. Why was that important? Because they wanted to attract non-veterinary surgeons to become owners of veterinary practices. Specifically, they wanted to attract people with money. And the final thing they did was they relaxed the rules surrounding advertising. They said that a lot of the lack of competition was because veterinary practices were told they shouldn't advertise. And they said, yes, they should, because that stimulates competition. So they were the big changes, and our marketplace changed from that day. They did it because they wanted to introduce finance into the profession. Money would only flow if it could be protected from future risk. And the limited company status of veterinary practices allowed that to happen. That should hopefully allow the formation of more efficient organisations. Now, generally that means bigger, but not necessarily. The word was more efficient. It allows external skills and experience to be brought into the profession. With that money would come external expertise. What the profession was good at was making sick animals better. What it wasn't so good at was running its own business. And of course, all of this is designed to stimulate competition and drive down the cost. And with driving down the cost, we drive down the price and customers benefit. So it's a customer-led change. So we started to see the emergence of what becomes known as a corporate practice, a practice that's principally a business. Now this causes a lot of problems because there's a lot of veterinary clinicians believe that the two don't go together, that the ethos of being a vet, of caring about the animal first, means that you can't always care in the same way you should about a business. And if a business is fundamentally about making profit for its shareholders, aren't we going to end up putting profit in front of pets? So it's an uncomfortable marriage, and still is today within the UK. Can a big business, whose principal motivation is a return for its shareholders, live with the ethos of putting the pet first? Now, when you hear a corporate talk, quite rightly they will say, of course it can, because that's our business. That's what we do. We put pets first because we believe in putting pets first. We'll have a successful business. But it's taken people a long time to believe that to be true. There are three corporate models we've seen emerge in the UK. The first one is private veterinary practices getting bigger. The second is what we call venture capital-backed groups. Venture capital are companies with investment who want to invest in growing businesses quickly. They're called venture capitalists because they tend to get in early in the formation of those businesses and help them through their initial growth in the expectation of large returns. They take a lot of risk by going in early, but they hope to get a lot of rewards. And the third method is what we call joint venture partnerships, which is a collaboration of shared ownership between a local practitioner and their practice and a core central company. So let's talk about how they've evolved. So the key players. Expanded private veterinary groups. We've seen veterinary groups slowly expanding in the UK, but remained principally a private group. They tend to still have a small number of partners, so the original owners of the practice that's kept growing still own it. They tend to borrow money, but only in a traditional way. They don't go to venture capitalists, they go to a bank. So perhaps they mortgage the buildings they've got, but they traditionally invest. The biggest of them today has 47 branches, 47 clinics. So they're still not that big compared to Manfield at 855. Their growth was originally constrained because they can only draw money from themselves. They've not gone and got a big pool of money from outside. They have to raise the finances themselves, which limits the speed of their growth. And initially they suffered because they suffered from a shortage of veterinary managers. As you grow a veterinary group, you have to have a way of managing it. Somewhere between the branch out there, the clinic out there, and the core of the business, you need some sort of manager. And those people didn't exist in the UK. Because if you brought somebody in from outside, they knew all about business, but nothing about vets. If you promoted a vet, they knew everything about vets and nothing about business. So these groups have had to grow the skills they need to fill these middle layers, and they're still growing them. The biggest of them is Goddard Group, based in London, that has 47 branches. And there's a number of them around the country, although some now have been bought by the venture capital companies. Another one is Village Vets. They've got 21 practices in North London, Cambridgeshire and Hertfordshire. So they're starting to grow, but they're still relatively modest in business terms. Then we come to the really big players, the venture capital-backed groups. These are veterinary practices who went to the money markets in London, went and sought a substantial financial backer. Two groups emerged very quickly after 1997. One's called CVS, and the other was called, and note the was, VPI. Both of those went to investment houses in the city. Initially, both of them had problems. They grew quickly, but couldn't manage their expanding group. And the money stopped coming in. So the venture capitalists took control, because that's what they do. In the case of VPI, that still wasn't sufficient. They'd grown too quickly. And they actually ran out of money. So they were bought by CVS, who took them both on. CVS drew in £8 million worth of investment from their venture capital partner to grow. So a significant investment. They acquired the majority of the VPI sites. A few went to another investor. And they remained for many years the only corporate acquirer of practices. So CVS would go and buy a veterinary practice from its owners and have been very successful at doing that. CVS floated on the stock exchange, the smaller AIM market in London, in 2007. Remember I said they attracted £8 million of investment from their venture capital partner? When they floated, they were valued at £105 million. The venture capital company left with 80 million. So 10 times its initial investment. Did they think they did a good deal? So now it's publicly owned, but it only has a small number of shareholders. The shares were bought by other smaller investment houses who both want to see the group, all want to see the group continue to grow. We've now got another one called Independent Vet Care that emerged 2 years ago, and they've also started buying up private veterinary practices. So here's CVS. This is from their report to their shareholders from, I think, March of this year. So they had 2,700 employees, 637 vets, 255 surgeries, 5 laboratories, 3 crematoria, and an online dispensary. And as you can see, they exist throughout the whole of the UK. They've bought 5 more since then. They're now at 260. So they keep acquiring practices. Independent Vet Care, they've been acquiring practices too. They're now up to 99. So we've got 2 fairly major corporates emerging through the venture capital route. And the final growth model is what we call the joint venture partnership. And in the UK, this has been built on the optician's experience. The optical market was deregulated in 1991. And so we saw the emergence of groups like Vision Express and Specsavers, where there's a central core company and a locally owned practice that is franchised from the core. And the franchise joint venture partner pays a percentage of their income every month to the core to use the company name and to get all their core services such as accountancy, health and safety, personnel advice, marketing, and so on. The biggest group's currently planning for 700 branches. So these boys mean business. The difference here is they will open a new branch. CVS, VPI before them, and now Independent Vet Care, they buy an existing branch. So they don't change the marketplace in the town that they buy the branch. The branch stays the same, doesn't change its name, still continues to trade as it was, it's just its ownership changes. These people open new branches. So this is 700 new clinics opening across the country. The joint venture model solves many of the management problems because you have an owner-manager in every branch. Every clinic is owned by at least one of its veterinary surgeons, sometimes by 2 veterinary surgeons, sometimes by a veterinary surgeon and a veterinary technician. But they own their branch, but they pay a royalty in franchise to the core body. There are now 2 joint venture groups in the UK. There used to be 3. Companion Care Vets, they exist mainly in a group called Pets at Home, which is the UK's largest pet superstores. They have over nearly 600 pet superstores across the UK. And companion care vets are principally located within their local Pets at Home. So the central core company of companion care vets was owned by Pets at Home. Earlier this year, they bought the other joint venture company called Vets for Pets. And they're now merging them into one company which will be called Vets for Pets. They already have collectively 299 clinics. And they're planning on 700 new openings. The other joint venture partners are called Medivet. Medivet's different in that the core company of Medivet is owned by vets. There are 11 partners at the core company and a whole series of joint venture partners around the country. And they currently have about 65 branches around the UK. So there's our big five. We've got CVS, was at 255. Companion Care and Vets for Pets was at 269, it's now at 299. Medivet at 93, Goddard's at 47, and Independent Vet Care, when this was drawn, was at 76. I know they're now at 99 because they've made some more acquisitions. So we've started to see this new breed of veterinary practices. Different ownership models, but still corporate in their ethos. Sharing best practice ideas. And these people have now started to compete with each other. In the early days, they didn't need to compete with each other. But now they're starting to compete with each other, and that changes the marketplace for all the private practices that sit around them. So, the corporate groups, what are their strengths? The first is obvious, is economies of scale. CVS have something like 25% of the UK veterinary market. When they go talk to the drug companies listen. They've centralised and efficient back office services. They've got professional people doing the role, not the owner of the practice doing a little bit of HR every night because he's got a problem to solve. But somebody whose job it's their profession to do it, who you call upon. So the quality of the service that their branches get is so much better. They've got increased buying power, of course they have. And so we see that. Typically, they're buying their products at something between 20 to 25% less than a private practice can buy them. And of course, they've got increasingly professional management. They're getting better and better at what they do. And so everybody else has to think about how we get better too. So what have private practices done? Well, they've looked at cooperative models. How can we be independent but work together? And so we've seen a number of these cooperative models start to emerge. We've got two associations. One's called XL Vets, one's called Premier Vet Alliance, where practices pay to be part of that organisation. And for that, they get a basket of central services that they get to make use of. So they try and create expertise in marketing, health and safety, financial management, communications, personnel management, and so on for their members. We've also got the creation of buying groups, groups that focus principally on helping practices get the best price for the products and services that they buy in. The two biggest ones in the UK are St Francis and Vets West, but there's 5 or 6 others. XL Vets and Premier Vets also act as buying groups. So practices that are members of St Francis or Vets West buy all their products through them, and they negotiate on behalf of all of their members with the drug companies to try and get the best deal. So Vets West, they're currently buying on behalf of nearly 200 veterinary practices. So they can get a better deal for their members. They also provide their members with a lot more additional information that they wouldn't have as a private practice. And they both now start to offer other value-added services for their members. So this is the way that private practices are trying to work together to be able to gain some of the benefits that the corporates have already got. So the buying groups have got improved buying power, they share best practice, and they make use of shared services to reduce some of the duplication and cost. So remaining independent, but working more collectively. The other big change in the UK that came about because of deregulation was the rise in what we call out-of-hours providers. So specialist centres who provide emergency care when the clinics are normally closed. When I first entered the veterinary profession, which was 14 years ago, there were 9 such centres in the UK. Just 9. There are now over 100. Every major town and city in the UK now has an out-of-hours provider. And that's fundamentally changing the nature of private practice, because it's taken away the need for an individual practice to worry about how it provides its service at 2 o'clock in the morning or at the weekend when it's normally closed. And that has a profound effect on the number of staff that you need, and particularly on the number of veterinary surgeons that you need. So we've seen a growth in small animal out-of-hours emergency centres. The biggest of them is called Vets Now, so that's a corporate. Vets Now emerged because they did a deal with the big animal charity, the PDSA, and created 25 centres. Vets now have over 50 centres, some of which now operate 24 hours a day, so not just at nights and at weekends. We've got some groups that have been led by an individual practice, so a large veterinary hospital has said, we will provide this service for our member practices, and I know in Spain you do that already, don't you, in many towns. The local hospital provides a support to a lot of little vets. And that's this model where an individual practice has created the out-of-hours provider. And sometimes we're now seeing cooperatives where a group of practices in a town will come together and collectively create an out-of-hours provision that they'll all then use and share. And of course, the advantage for many owners of small practices of that model is that they're not afraid that if I send my client over there, they won't come back, because I'm sending them to somebody who I own, and I know they'll send them back. And that was the big advantage of Vets Now, is that's all they did. They would never try and keep your client. They would service your client's needs and send them back, because that's what they did. So they were very attractive to private practices because they didn't fear them as a competitor. Whereas this individual practice-led model tends to have a fear that if we send them to that place, they may never come back. They might just like it better than we do. So we've seen this big change, and it's changing the way we work in practices. So where's that left us today? Well, the big challenge is our world is changing. It's dramatically changing at the moment, and the practices are having to adapt to that. We're still getting more and more technological advances, which are getting more and more expensive. Who here has got a digital X-ray machine? Who would like digital X-ray machines? Everybody wants a digital X-ray machine. They're wonderful, but they're expensive. Who here's got ultrasound? Ultrasound? Who would like ultrasound? Okay, it's expensive. Our consumer needs are changing. In the UK, customers are becoming less loyal. They're moving around. We find that nearly 1 in 5 pet owners uses more than one veterinary practice. They pick and choose like we're supermarkets. They'll go here for one service, there for something else. They're much more mobile. They want us to be accessible when they want us. Not the hours we want to work, but the hours they want us open. They want us open longer in the evenings, at the weekends, at the times we find it difficult to be open. They want more involvement. They're not just prepared to hand Tiddles over at 5 o'clock and expect him back the next day, fixed. They want to know what we're going to do. Our staff expect more of our clinics. They want more flexibility in the hours that they work. They want increased responsibility. They want to support their own personal development. They want reward and recognition. All of us have increased our expectations from life. And so every one of our staff reflects that in their demands of us as their bosses. We in the UK too have got changing demographics, just as America. Fewer owners, fewer pets per owner. The statistics show a gradual and steady decline. And of course, with the rise of the corporates, we're seeing an increasing amount of competition within the veterinary marketplace. And then, just like America, we've got pets at home, we've got the online pharmacies, we've got online pet shops. All of these people want to take some of our work away. So, what do? Well, in what they call a dynamic service environment, the goal has to be to improve the quality of service that we deliver. We are a service. We don't like to think of ourselves sometimes as a service, but that's how our customers see us. We are a service to them. So, how do we drive quality of service? Well, we can become more flexible. We can provide the services customers want at the times that they want them. But that doesn't fit well, does it? We can increase the speed of service. How quickly can we deliver them the solution they want? How many of you in your clinics have an appointment system where the client comes in and know when they're going to be seen? How many of you would guarantee to the client that if they weren't seen at that time or within 10 minutes of it, you wouldn't charge them for it? That's what Domino Pizza do. If we let you down, you don't pay. How many of you would put that on your door? Why not? We're a service. And that's the problem. Why don't clients come back for their vaccination? Well, because last year when they came back, they were with you for an hour and a half. Because you had a busy day. You'd had a road traffic accident. Or some complicated case. And you were running late. And you just made them all wait. And when you finally got to see them, you were playing catch up the time. It's a vaccination. Whoopee. Get it done in 3 minutes. Let's get the next client in. Recognize it? Did you charge them less because you'd made them wait an hour and a half and then only saw them for 5 minutes? No. Are you surprised they haven't come back? You shouldn't be. Reliability and consistency, which includes the speed of service. Do they know what they're going to get? Can we deliver that every time? No, we can't, Mark. I know you can't. Why? There's only 5 of us in the clinic. There might only be 3 of us in the clinic. If we have a busy day, we have to let people down. That's how it is, isn't it? But that's not the client's view. They don't care what kind of day we've had. They just want what we've told them we're going to give them. Every time. We have to be user-friendly. That means they can bring the children with them. Don't we love children in our practice? Don't we just enjoy school holidays? When the whole family come? Aren't they just great? Yeah. And back to accessibility. How can they get hold of us? Telephone, email, voicemail, text messaging, walking in off the street. How accessible do we make ourselves? And the range of services that we'll do. Can we do everything from basket to casket? Do we do it all? Yes, we do. And what about focusing on outcomes for our users? What makes a good day for us? If I come to you at the end of the day and say, did you have a good day? How do you measure your success? Do you measure it in customer terms? Invariably, we measure it in clinical terms. Oh yeah, we had a really good dental we sorted out. We had that gastric torsion that we resolved. We did this fantastic laparoscopectomy. How many clients did we serve on time? How many clients went away thinking, I got what I wanted from my veterinary practice today? Is that how we measure our success? And ultimately, it's about value for money, and we'll talk more about value for money. Because what does it mean? It means I got what I thought I should get for the amount of money I paid for it. It's my perception of what you did against my expectation of what I thought you should do. Two difficult words. My perception. How do you influence that? My expectation. How do you influence that? But my judgment on value is based on those two things. So we have to look to change. Jeffrey said, you've got a choice. You can carry on doing what you've always done, or you can change. So we need to change. Sometimes when we change something, it can have a profound impact on our marketplace. Every now and again, somebody comes along in an industry and does something that's radically different. In 1958, it was a guy called MacDonald. The guy who opened the first McDonald's. Because he changed the way he organized a fast food restaurant. McDonald's did it a different way. They de-skilled it. They took out the need for trained chefs. They broke it down into individual tasks and trained people to do just one or two tasks. It meant they could churn their staff very quickly. It meant they could train their staff very quickly. It meant they got very consistent at what they did. And all of those things reduced the cost. And we all know what happened to McDonald's. So occasionally something comes along. And I would say to you, when those changes happen, they change customer perceptions and expectations. Because that's what McDonald's did. Suddenly people said, hey, hang on a minute, there's lots of things about McDonald's I don't like. But what I do like is that when I walk in, their goal is to serve me in 2 minutes. I'm going to walk out with exactly what I thought I was going to get. Because they have systems to make sure that every single one of them looks exactly the same. And when we're on a busy motorway and we've got 2 screaming children in the back, we know we can pull into a McDonald's, buy 2 Happy Meals. We know exactly what will happen behind us. Outcome guaranteed. Yes? We don't like McDonald's. We hate the smell of McDonald's as parents, but we know what we're going to get from McDonald's. And our perception has changed. Now if we go into a fast food restaurant and it's not fast, we think this is rubbish. Because McDonald's have shown us what they can do. So changes, when they happen sometimes, change our customer perceptions and hence our expectations. And the rest of the marketplace will be judged by those same expectations. If you don't do what the market leader does, you're in trouble. Often, of course, they change operational practices. They're focused on doing something differently. That's what delivers the change. And ultimately, if these work, we change commercial fortunes. And frankly, that's what wellness plans are doing. As Jeffrey said, they're a changed mindset. You have to stop thinking about practice in the way we used to think about it. What's going to arrive today? Have I got the skills, knowledge, experience, and technology to put it right? No. We're going to control what comes in today. There will be the odd emergency, but we'll deal with that. But principally what we're here for is to deliver wellness to our clients. And that's what wellness plans do. They change the operational practices and they change customer perception and expectation of what a veterinary practice should do. And that's what drives competitive advantage. It makes you different from the other practices. It makes it harder for them to go and use the competitors, whether that's another veterinary clinic or whether it's the online sales or whether it's the pet shop down the road. You drive through change competitive advantage because you change perceptions and expectations that the others cannot meet. And that's where we drive the commercial fortune from, through that differentiation in the marketplace. So, let's look at wellness plans. First question, who benefits from a wellness plan? Well, let's not forget, the principal beneficiary of a health plan is the patient. It's the pet, it's the cat, or it's the dog. It's the principal reason wellness plans work. It's because actually it's what we and the customer both want. We want a well pet, don't we? You see, you've not said yes, Mark. Because actually you want a sick pet, because they're so much more fun, Mark. We can get all this technology out and we can show just how fantastic we are. The client will think we walk on water when they see what we do next. Oh, please, Mark, let me have a sick pet. I don't want a well one. That's our problem. We're still focused on sick pets. We're motivated by sick pets. But the principal beneficiary of a health plan is the patient. Firstly, they receive regular health checks. And we all know, all the clinicians in the room, you all know the benefit of that. Catch it early, we can do more about it. They receive the preventative treatment in terms of vaccinations, parasite control, that you advise is best in your practice, and that's the key. It's what you think's right for your clients, for your patients in your place. The risks change. Different parts of Spain, just like different parts of the UK and different parts of America, carry different risks. There's different diseases, different parasites are present. You decide what's right for your patients in your place. Their health is monitored, and so changes become quickly identified, particularly if you include things like background chemistry or background bloods, so you can see the changes. And this is key. Their owners receive ongoing advice and support to keep their pets well. Because that's what a wellness plan is about. It's about doing everything we can to educate the owner and support the owner to deliver the outcome to their pet. I was saying to somebody at the break, the problem with vets is when you chose to be a vet, what were your other choices? The chances are you were thinking, should I be a doctor and work with humans, or should I be a vet and work with animals? And you chose to work with animals. But guess what? We're in the people business. Because you can't use your skills unless the owner says yes. All of your skills are for nothing if the owner says, no, we're not prepared to pay for that. So we are fundamentally, whether we like it or not, in the people management business. And health plans are about managing our clients. So it's all about keeping healthy pets. We know it works because if we look at what happens to pets or patients who aren't on a health plan, and I don't know how good you are in Spain, but I remember seeing some figures 10 years ago that suggested you weren't an awful lot different from the UK, and I suspect you've not changed a lot. But in the UK, this is what we typically find. And these numbers come from practices that I've worked with and practices that I've done studies on. We would expect that primary vaccinations only exist in between 1/2 and 3/4 of all dogs, and between just under and just over 1/2 of all cats. We've not been very good at this preventative message. When we look at the sale of external parasite controls, flea treatments, we find that about 1/3 of dogs and 1/3 of cats will have bought at least one dosage set. But usually only one. The one that you recommended and sold them when they came for their vaccination. But they've never actually come back. Even though you only gave them 3 months or even 6 months protection. And with internal parasites, worming, we find it slightly better. With dogs, it's between 40 and 60%, and cats between 40 and 50%. But again, the number that come back, depending on which protocol you're using, they'll come back in 3 months or 4 months or 6 months, depending on the products. They just don't come back. And when we analyze it and say, well, actually, how Any of these patients actually got everything we would recommend in our practice in a year. In the UK, it's fewer than 10%. That we could actually show from the clinical records, when you analyse the computer system, actually got 12 lots of parasite control, 4 or 3 or whatever it is, lots of worming control, and their annual vaccination. 1 in 10 of our patients. I have a suspicion if you ever did the numbers in your practice, you wouldn't find it to be a lot different. Because it's not what we fundamentally do. We dabble with it. We haven't taken the mindset change to say this is what we're about. We know that clients want a health plan. I spent a lot of time in the last 3 years working with one of the third-party plan providers in the UK, a company called Denplan. So they practice health plans from Denplan. They're actually big in the human dentistry field, and they've now moved into animal health plans. So we spent a lot of time studying how health plans have been working and what we need to do to make health plans better. And wherever we go and look for health plans, even the most badly run plans, we find that 2% of vaccinated patients are on them. So even where the practice hasn't really sorted its plan out, hasn't got a clear protocol, the practice team were never trained, but they actually put a leaflet out and said, here, you can join our plan, at least 2% of clients joined it. So we know there's a latent demand from clients for health plans. If a plan's been running so-so for a few years, we typically found that if the practice has brought one in, it's done a modicum amount of training, the owner's sort of behind it, most of the vets are on board, we'll tend to find between 5 and 10% of our vaccinated patients are now on the plan. However, as we heard with Banfields, when you get behind them, the best practices are now looking at 20% of their vaccinated patients being on their plan, so 1 in 5. And I know of a practice that's already over 30% and currently is targeting getting 40%. So 40% of their clients paying into their payment plan. As Jeffrey was saying, Banfields, I think if you did the maths, it meant something like 32% of income was coming from plans. Was that what you said, Janine? You said that 60% of 80%, is that what it? No, 40% of 80%, yeah, so 32% of income. Isn't it great to know that 32% of your income next month is already guaranteed? Would that make you sleep easily at night, knowing that the first third's already done? Would it give you more time to think about what you're going to do with the other 2/3? So we know that there's a demand from clients. We know if the plans are well run, they can get great rates of penetration. The truth of it is none of us know how far we can take them. You've heard Banfield say it's taken them a few years to really get themselves sorted on what their plan's all about. They're still growing it. Who knows where it's going to finish? So we don't yet know what the maximum might be. I can't stand here and tell you. What I can tell you is I know some practices who think 40% is very achievable. And once they get to 40%, I'm sure they'll be thinking about 50%. We know they make financial sense because they appeal to everybody. It was interesting that, and I've got some figures to show you, some of you asked, who do you target? Well, we know that new pet owners like them. If you've just made a significant investment in a puppy for your children, particularly if you've gone and bought one that's very popular. What's popular in Spain? In the UK now it's Labradoodles. I'd love to know how she's just translated Labradoodle. It's a cross between a Labrador and a poodle. Very fashionable. They cost €1,000 in the UK. What are they in Spain? So you've paid €1,000 for your Labradoodle. You bring it to the vet for its vaccination. Hopefully you say, you want to look after your investment, don't you? What you need is our health plan. But we also know that dedicated clients buy in. We know that some clients buy in because the budgeting's so important to them. And Janine talked about those. And anyone who believes in prevention better than cure will buy into a plan. when you point out to them the benefits of the plan, it will likely avoid this, it will likely avoid that. It's a bit like the way we talk about insurance. If you don't want the surprise of having this happen, we can do this. And if we keep doing this, we'll make sure that never happens. And my studies have shown that plan members turn their intentions into actions. Because that's this compliance debate we've been having in the profession for many years. How do we turn the owner's good intentions into actions? All those clients that we talked about who you sold the first lot of flea treatment to when they came for their vaccination, they would have given you the impression they were coming back for the next lot, wouldn't they? When you said to them, now, Mrs. Smith, you know you have to do this every month, don't you? Yes. You know that you'll have to come back in 6 months' time and get some more, don't you? Yes. So they went away intending to do that, but then just never came back. Did they turn into a bad pet owner in the 6 months in between? No, they just got busy lives. Something else came up. Something else distracted them. They've probably actually not used the 6 you gave them because they've kept forgetting to put it on. So they open the drawer and there's still 4 here. I don't need to go. They said I'd need to go back in 6 months. I don't. I've still got 3 left. Yeah? They haven't become bad owners. They've just been distracted. And what health plans do is help us lock those intentions, their intention to go away and be a good owner, to actually lock that into positive action. So I want to share with you now some studies that we did on behalf of Denplan. So we went into 6 practice groups. The largest of them had 5 clinics. It had something like 14 veterinary surgeons, and it serviced something like 15 or 16,000 patients a year. And the smallest of them was a single practice with just 2 veterinarians in them, and they looked after about 4,500 patients in a year. Some were located in the south, where it's more affluent, and some were located in the north, where it's less affluent. So we tried to get a cross-section of practices. So these are the collective results. And what we wanted to know is, what actually happens? How do clients behave when they're on a plan? Can we see what the effect of the plan is? And of course, the answer is with a computer system, yes, you can. So we did what we called the data analysis study, where we extracted lots of data from these practices, and then I sat in my office in the southwest of England and crunched all the numbers. The first group I looked at, because to me they were the most interesting, was existing clients and patients who'd been with their clinic for at least a year. And somebody in the question down here said, isn't it just our best clients that join? Because that's the fear all of us would have about our business, is that these clients, we perceive them to be already doing what we're about to ask them to do. Because when we saw them a year ago, they said yes, they would. But as we've just seen from the numbers, what they really meant was, well, I intend to. But that's not the same as saying, yes, I will. But we can track their behavior in the year before they joined the plan and compare it with what happened in the first year they were on the plan. And so this is this group. Whoops. So, okay, yeah. So that's this little group down here. So we've got a group of dogs and we've got a group of cats. These are the 6 practices. We did 3 of them in 1 year, and we did the other 3 in the following year. But what you can see is the average increase in spend just on those services that are contained in the plan. So whatever the practice said, this is our plan, you get this within it. We looked at how much of that they bought in the previous 12 months for the date they joined their plan. And what we found is the average was 293 and 292%, so almost 3 times more in financial value was purchased by being a member of the plan, through the plan, than they bought before. And all of the plans would include a discount. So even allowing for that discount, they were spending 3 times more with the clinic than they had in the previous 12 months, on average. Now, obviously, there's a big difference between what they spend and how much profit we make. But the more they spend, the easier it is for us to make a profit. So that, to me, was the most important group, because these we could study. These are the people we call our best clients, the ones we expect to join the plan. And of course, we shouldn't be surprised by that number, because all the compliance studies have already shown us that actually when we look, these clients intended to do these things, but they didn't actually do them. And that's what that tripling reflects. The fact that now they're locked into your practice and you are providing all those services to them. And you are making sure they come back and get them. The second group was to look at puppy and kittens. Now, of course, with this group, we can't measure what would have happened before because they weren't here before. But what we found was that with this group, we also got a tripling. Plan members spent on average 3 times more than non-plan members in the first 12 months on the preventative measures that were within the practices plan. And that's a fairly consistent number. So what that says to me is this is the effect of plans. It's turning intentions into action, and the reality is in the UK, that means a tripling of the income from those people. Most plans have links to other services. We'll talk about these in a minute, but most plans, like the Banfield plans, will give discounts to members on other things they buy from the practice. Sometimes they're very specific, sometimes they're more general. So it might be you get 10% off everything, but it might be for a puppy plan, we'll give you 40% off the neutering. So you can make them very specific. So what we looked at here is what happens with those other items that they spend. And what we found with puppies and kittens is that puppies generally spent about 3 times more if they're a plan member, and the kittens spent a little bit less. And that's generally because the neutering cost is so much more for a dog than a cat. That's what that multiplication is reflecting. When it came to the adults and juvenile converts, the figures here were nothing like as good. They were very mixed across the practice. One practice actually went down in the study, but most went up a little bit. And what it really says to us is that what we're not doing in those clinics is convincing those clients of the benefit of those services. We're not communicating that benefit to the client. Because the puppy owners we tend to see more often. Generally in clinics in the UK, you'll try and see a puppy every month for its first 6 months. You'll bring it in for a weight check, part of its socialisation, getting it used to coming to the vets. So we tend to see puppy and kitten owners a lot. And so we have more opportunities to communicate to them the value of the other things we can offer them. Whereas with adults and juveniles, we tend not to see them between their health check visits. And so we have less time to communicate. And we need to get better at that. The message from this is we need to get better with that group of people. So we know that health plans work. We know that they drive additional revenue into the practice. We know that clients want them. So how do we measure their success? Well, one way is to look at penetration, this percentage. What percentage of our vaccinated patients have we got into our plan? The clients we're providing regular service to, how many of those have we convinced? And I think that's a reasonable measure to start to use. But our experience tells us something. If you try and define plan success in terms of a patient demographic, what tends to happen is it limits who we talk to. If you as the owner say, look, I think these plans will really appeal to puppy and kitten owners, what you then find is your staff only talk to puppy and kitten owners about the plan because you've told them that's the best group. Or if you say, this is for our best clients will want this plan, the staff will think, who's our best client? I'll talk to you, but no, I'm too busy to talk to you because you're not in that group. So we have to be careful that if we try and target a group, we end up only targeting that group and not talking to everybody. And what the study showed is everybody wants to join because there's lots of different reasons why clients want to be part of the plan. So we have to talk to everybody. So the aim should be every client who comes in gets talked to about the plan. As Jeffrey said, when they walk in, the first thing the person on reception should be looking at is this a plan member? If it is, I'm going to greet them like a plan member. Hello, Mrs. Smith. I see you're one of our plan members. It's really good to see you back again. Well done. Congratulations. You're doing the best for your pet. That's what we want, isn't it? And if they aren't, then we should be starting to talk to them about the plan, communicating it through. And the goal should be to grow the patient numbers each month. You know, there's no reason why we shouldn't keep growing the clients, and I'll show you some figures that reflect that. At the end of the day, every pet deserves a health plan. That should be our goal. This is a slightly complicated graph, but I think quite illuminating. What this graph represents is the annual spend distribution of the clients of a practice. So I've analysed how much each client spent in a 12-month period. And the first thing we calculate normally in a practice is what's the average spend of our clients. And in this practice, which happens to be in the south of England, so it's quite an expensive practice, the average spend was actually £230.59. So if we take the total income of the practice, divide it by the number of clients, that's the average spend per client. What we then plot on here is the frequency of the average spend. And I've made 1 the most common. So what we suddenly discover is, whilst the practice average spend is 230, the commonest spend, the one that's most likely to happen, is actually here at £23.94. I broke the average into 20 steps. And that figure's the one that represents 1 consultation or sickness visit or 1 vaccination. The most common visit frequency for a client is once. We see them once. The other thing to note is this line. This red line is the cumulative number of clients. And what we discover is that when we reach the average, that cumulative figure is at 75%. So 3/4 of all the clients in that practice spend less than the average. With the bulk of them, if we come down here to the 50% figure, spending less than half the average. And often when we benchmark practices, this average spend is something we look at. But it's very misleading. The vast bulk of our clients come in only once a year and spend relatively little. And a small number, increasingly small number, spend more than the average. In fact, only 25% of them spend more than the average. So, when you offer a health plan, who is going to take up the health plan? Well, if we believe our own rhetoric, as they say, we would say it's our best clients. So they must be up here, mustn't they? Isn't that going to be our best clients, the ones who spend more with us? The ones who we see more frequently? Well, you would have thought so, except this graph is the same graph, but on top of it now, the orange line, that's the average spend of the people who joined a plan in the year before they joined it. And what you see is, it's a little bit shifted, but actually the most common is still the people who only came once, and it distributes itself, much as the rest of our clients do. So the message from that is, if you look back at a client's spend in the last 12 months, it's no indication of their likelihood to join your plan. Because that's not what happens. Yet our natural thinking is, we know who these people are. We know who's going to join our plan. It's that group we call our best clients, the ones we've got to know. But the reality is, it's far from the truth. All of your clients want a plan. You just have to offer it to them. And what this graph shows is that you have to keep offering it to them, because what this graph is showing us is the average time in days that in the red line, the client's been a member of the practice. So we look back from the date of joining a plan, when did this client join our practice? So how long have they been with the clinic? The blue line is the average age of the patient when they join the plan, and the green line is the average length of time the patient's been with the practice. Because obviously, generally, clients stay longer than their pets because their pets die and they get replaced. And what do we see over the 2 years this practice has been trying to recruit? Do we see that over time they slowly have got all their best clients onto the scheme? All their long-standing clients? Have they all joined at the start? No. Because we find 2 years on, the average length of service of the client before they join has stayed the same. The average age of the pet has stayed the same. And the average time the pet's been with the client has stayed the same. So you have to keep telling people, because people don't always do what you say on the first visit. So the key message when you're promoting your plan is promote it to everybody, even if you've told them before. Because the statistics show that they keep recruiting. When you talk to practices after they've been running their plans for a year or a year and a half, they start to say, oh, we're waiting for new clients now. The inference is we've talked to all the existing ones, we saw them all last year. So they didn't want to join, so we've got to wait for the new ones. No, keep talking to them, even if you talked to them last year and the year before and the year before that. Sometimes the message takes a while to get through. But driving your plan requires commitment and support. Now, this work was done for Denplan, who, as part of their service to their members, provide additional support. This is the recruitment rate for a large practice group that have been running their own plan. And so they've been successful over several years. They've grown their plan membership to around 200. But then they turned to a third-party provider. But more importantly, that third-party provider did a number of things. It got them to think about the contents of their plan and adjust them. It made sure everybody in the practice was committed to the plan. Does this sound familiar from earlier? Okay, and then they supported everybody to make sure they did what they needed them to do. And suddenly, the rate of recruitment takes a hike. And that's an important message. It shows what happens when you support the plan. But even when the plan was poorly supported and wasn't well organised, it still recruited. Clients still wanted it, which again demonstrates that latent desire from clients for the plan. And of course, with growing membership comes growing income. So here's a practice now with almost 1,000 members and a significant income guaranteed every month from its wellness plan. CVS, in its latest message to its shareholders, they've got behind their Healthy Pet Club, as they call it. So this is a big group. Look at the rate of recruitment they've been achieving. The end of last year, they got to 139,000. They were already saying 10.5% of their total income was coming through their plan, and they were continuing to grow it. They've just announced their 150,000th member. Now, still small compared to Banfield's 1.9 million. But what's important is that it shows that well-supported, well-structured, well-thought-through plans with the support of all the staff are popular. So what were the key findings of our data study? Firstly, plan members increased spend on the plan services threefold. They knew what they had to do, they were committed to doing it, they just didn't get round to it. The plan locks their intention into action. Compliance rates among non-plan members still remain poor. What we found in the practice is, whilst we were constantly talking about the preventative message, generally, once a client understood and accepted that message, they joined the plan. Well, why wouldn't they? And that's a really important lesson with plans. We don't sell the plan. We first sell the preventative healthcare message. Because if the client doesn't understand, doesn't accept that in the next 12 months this is what I need to do, the plan makes no economic sense. But the minute you say, I am going to do this, and then that, and then that, and then that, why wouldn't you join the plan? Because it's going to save you money. So we don't sell plans, we sell the preventative message. The plan sells itself. Because why wouldn't you join it if it's going to save you money? Recruitment requires consistent effort, and your staff need your support. We need to be constantly encouraging, and getting them to think about the way they do it. If you've talked to 10 people and none of them want to join the plan, you're probably not saying it right. So let's sit them down and get them to think about how they use it. What are the words they use? How are they phrasing it? Let's get better at communicating. Past spending patterns are no indication of future membership. Okay, so don't try and look in the past and think, who might this appeal to? It appeals to everybody. Just set out with that intention. And don't give up on existing clients. Every time, every cat, every dog, every day. Love it, Jeffrey. Because that's what it has to be with a plan. The evidence supports that. Keep saying it, keep doing it, keep telling your staff to do it. So, looking at designing and promoting your wellness plans. I thought I'd structure it around the 5 Ps, because I know lots of you in this room have got master's degrees in business, so I thought we understand the 5 Ps, don't we? And, in the UK, that's product, price, place, promotion, and people. And I know it works in Spain because I went on the internet and found this. So I know you know what the 5 Ps are. And it's interesting, Janine has given you some clues this morning, and you're going to discover I'm going to tell you much of the same things. So design your plan. It's absolutely key. Your plan needs to meet the needs of your clients. Not anybody else's clients, but your clients. Who are the people you're targeting your clinic at? If you haven't thought about that, you should anyway. Your clinic's in a marketplace. Who are your clients? Are you planning to be the best, the most expensive, or the budget and low cost? Who are your clients? Because your plan needs to meet their needs. What you can't have is a plan that isn't focused on your clients. All you'll do is get everybody confused. You'll either attract clients with your plan that then are disappointed by what else you do, or your plan won't appeal to the clients you've already attracted. It has to be your plan for your clients. The plan has to bring clear benefits for the patient. Everybody has to understand what they are. The first rule of selling, we don't sell products, we sell benefits. Clients come to us for solutions to their problems. We sell them those solutions. That's the benefit. So you've got to be clear, what's the benefit of your plan? Why is a patient better off on the plan than not on the plan? This is really important. Janine talked about it, and I'll talk about it. Everybody in the team has to support the plan. And you have to keep working with the team and working on your plan until everybody does. Or sometimes you have to say to people, well, that's actually what we're going to do, and if you're uncomfortable, you're going to have to go somewhere else because we're doing it. This is really important. It's got to be consistent with your clinic's values. There's no point in copying somebody else's plan. It's your values. You own your practices. You've chosen to be an independent veterinary owner. You did it because it gives you freedom. It gives you the freedom to make a clinic in your vision. A clinic that reflects your values as the owner. Your plan must reflect those values too. Otherwise, you'll confuse your staff, and the staff will confuse your clients. So be true to yourself. You know what you want from your clinic. Make sure your plan reflects that. So, wellness plans provide 3 types of services. The things that we include within it. So what are the products and services that if you pay for this plan, you get? Sometimes we have optional products and services, so other things you can add into your plan. Perhaps that's additional screening for senior pets. Perhaps it's a dental element. But something that they pay an additional monthly fee for to make their plan bigger and better. And the final thing is we link other products and services through discounts to the plan. So that's part of the plan's effectiveness and attractiveness to clients is the discount it gives you. If you were buying all your Royal Canin food from us in my clinic, we will give you this discount because you're a plan member. For your size of dog, that will save you this much every year. These are big benefits if we sell them properly as part of our plan. And it brings those services back into our clinic from down the road. So what sort of things do we tend to include? In the UK, every plan has an annual health check with a veterinary surgeon. They all include the annual vaccinations, the booster vaccinations. They all include general parasite control, so internal, external, fleas and worms, appropriate to the area the practice is based. Generally, they include a 6-month health check, so we bring the client back in mid-year. Sometimes that's guaranteed to be with a vet, sometimes it's done by a veterinary technician or a nurse. It's a midpoint health check, and the vet only becomes involved if the nurse or technician brings it to their attention. Other things, they could include advanced parasite control. So depending on the risk of the areas, it might include heartworm treatment, it might include ticks, for example. Sometimes the puppy and kitten plan includes the primary vaccinations. Sometimes they're excluded from it. Sometimes practices will include canine influenza vaccine or kennel cough, which is a commonly used vaccine in the UK. Some plans include it, some choose to add it on. Often people will include the microchip. It's becoming law in the UK to microchip every dog in 18 months' time. Anyway, but practices have said if you're not microchipped, we'll just put one in as part of being a plan member. And the illness consultations. And I know there was lots of questions for Janine about illness consultations, whether they should be in or out. It's a significant cost into the plan. And so if you're putting it in, you have to think about how much you're going to have to increase the plan value by to accommodate it. And whilst we can calculate what the average number of consultations a client not in a plan uses today, and in the UK it's quite low, it's about 1 to 1.5. So we could cost that in. If you offer it, you know they're going to use it more often. So you need to think about the cost to your business of that. Now, of course, if you've got lots of veterinary surgeons with little to do, then offering free consultations brings them in, and while they're in, you'll sell them something else, so the contribution will add. But if you're very busy, bringing them in for extra visits might require you to recruit an extra member of staff. And so you have to think about where it sits in the context of your clinic today. Optional products and services, advanced parasite control, so some practices have an add-on to do extra things. Puppy kitten services like neutering, so turning a juvenile plan into a puppy plan with an addition. Dental health care is offered by some practices, but as an example of demand, I know one clinic that has around 1,100 plan members, and they have a dental health care option, and only 32 members have taken it up out of 1,100. So that's probably as much a function of how well that clinic promotes that service as it is about the demand from clients, but that's what we've tended to find. Let me just go backwards. Interesting is very few practices in the UK include screening, either blood or urine screening within their plans. And that's because for many practices that's an external service, they're sending it to an external lab. Now, obviously in Banfields you send it to your own labs, okay? And at CVS they can send it to their own labs. But most practices, that's a fixed fee, and it's quite a significant fee in the UK in proportion to what annual overall wellness, the vaccination and the parasite control costs. So it's quite a big addition to put in if you put some form of annual screening. So you need to think about where it fits. And in the UK, most practices have seen it as an add-on. It's something that we give you a discount for if you need it, but we've not made it part of the plan. There are a few clinics that have senior plans in which they've included it, but it's very few. And then the linked discounts, well, they can be anything. Things like neutering, long-term medications is becoming popular. With the rise of internet pharmacies, is locking in a management plan for a long-term medication so that we keep bringing the client back to us so that we provide that medication each time they come. And that's making use usually of our veterinary technicians, our nurses. So saying to a client, well, I could write you the script and you can go away and buy it cheaper from somewhere else. Or if you're a plan member, then we offer this service. So we want you to come in every 3 months. We'll provide the medication at that time. We'll also check his heart. We'll check his weight. We'll do this. We'll do that. And make that part of a planned service that they get if they continue to source their long-term medications through you. Diets are usually linked. There's usually a food discount in every plan. Dental health care is invariably discounted in the plan, either specifically or in a general, we give you this. And some practices, like Banfield, say, well, and everything else we'll give this percentage on. So we're trying to make the plan as attractive as we can through the discounts. And then you put together your plan, and here's one from a practice. So they've decided that in it you've got the vaccination and consultation, year-round flea and worm, 10-point health check, a 6-month health check. You get a record book. Interesting, Janine was saying that in Banfield you get an email once you join. Some practices have a member book that gets sent to say, welcome to the plan, thank you for joining it, it's just what your pet needs, here's a record book you can keep all the stuff in. And then here they've got 30% off primary vaccinations for puppies and kittens, 20% off a tick collar if they buy it, 15% off neutering, 15% off microchipping, and so on. So they've put together what they think is a basket of services that works for them and their clients. And then we come to price. It's the key part of the plan, is deciding how to price it. And it's not an easy decision. The first thing you have to look at, it was interesting, Janine said I recommend 10%. And somebody said, why 10%? Good question. Why not 15? Why not 5? The highest I know of is a plan in Ireland that's doing 25. But here's the key. It will depend on your overall pricing strategy, because it depends where you start from. Because it's about creating a perception of value. And of course, you may already be doing that. So your room for maneuver may be much less. It's about understanding the contribution that you get from each additional product or service that you sell through the plan. It's a little bit of accountancy that we all need to learn. This is the classic price versus quality matrix. We all understand it as consumers. Every one of your clients understands it. The more we pay for something, the better the quality we expect. That's how it works, isn't it? And up the middle, we've got this line of fair value. So, if we buy a low quality product, but we pay a low price for it, we tend to call that an economy product. We know it's not the best product out there, but it's also not the most expensive. Equally, at the top end, we can have a high quality product, but we expect to pay a high price for it. It's what we call a premium product. And in thinking about your practice, you should have thought whereabouts on this matrix your practice sits. Are you the premium practice with premium prices to reflect the quality of service that you can offer, the technology that's available? Are you the economy practice? Have you done everything to keep your costs as low as possible to make the cost of pet ownership as low as possible for your clients? Because depending on where you start, depends on how you want to position your plan. If you're down here, you probably haven't got 10% to give away. You've given it away already. You're working on the fact that you're going to have lots of volume and make a little bit on every one. If you're up here, lots of high-end services, but you're probably using them very little, so they're very expensive. That nice piece of technology sits there with a cover on it most of the time. But once that cover comes off, boy, does it get some expenses in. Yeah? Because it's a different business. So how much you choose to discount your plan depends on where you are in the first place. But equally, if this is your perception, if this is what you want clients to feel, offering a budget plan will just confuse everybody. Sounds like a great idea. We've got more margin to start with, so we can offer a bigger discount. But if ultimately that brings in clients because they think you're the cheap practice, they're going to get surprised, aren't they? Because at some point they'll discover you're not. Now, one UK group, and I'm not going to say who it was, did just this. They created a very, very economy plan, low-end services, but actually they're a premium practice. They attracted lots of clients. But those clients have all become disgruntled. If you go onto internet message boards, they're all complaining about this particular vets because they went there thinking they were the economy practice. The minute they moved outside their plan, they discovered what they'd come to. They'd come to a premium practice with premium prices. It wasn't what they expected. They felt duped by the practice. We've been misled. You've conned us in through the door. And so they all complain about it. It's not a bad practice. It's just it attracted the wrong sort of clients. So your plan has to be consistent with where you are. And of course, where you want to be is just above the line, because then clients think you're giving better value. Where you don't want to be is below the line. False economy, or even down here, where people think we're ripping them off, because their perception of what we are doesn't match our price. So CVS, well, they're a big company. They position themselves towards the bottom of the market. They're using their economies of scale to compete in the marketplace on price. So in the UK, the average dog plan is probably around £14 or £15. Where's CVS's? £9.99. That's not a price you calculate and then add a percentage to, is it? You don't get to £9.99 by some mathematical formula. You get to £9.99 by saying, I want my plan to be at £9.99. Of course, everyone will tell you that's a very, very dangerous place to launch a plan at. Because what price do you put it to next? Everybody in marketing knows if you create a price cliff like that, you're stuck. Because you can't raise it 5%. You can't move it to £10 and 4p. Everybody in industry says it's a horrible place to start, and yet they've chosen to start there. £9.99. It'll be almost impossible to move from it. But that's what they've chosen to do. Being successful. Why did they do it? Because it became a no-brainer for their staff. They said, we're a big organisation. We've got to communicate the benefit of this plan to 3,000 people. We're going to make it so attractive, every one of our staff are just going to see this bit of paper and go, that's a no-brainer. Of course, oh, brilliant. And they tell that to every client. You'd be daft not to do this. And that's how they've got their membership to grow. Their next challenge will be how they then change the price at some future date. But probably they don't intend to. They're thinking as we keep growing, our costs are keep going to coming down. So for the next few years, if we meet our strategic plan of keeping growing, we'll squeeze the market suppliers to match this price for us. That's what they're thinking about. And that's what we're all having to learn to compete with. So you need to think about how you price your plan. Most private practices couldn't get close to that. They just couldn't afford to do it. So the advice is don't try. Differentiate on what you do best. If that's about personal service, then build personal service into your plan. If that's about high quality service, build high quality service into your plan. Be unashamed about it. Because ultimately you have to understand the contribution you get from every client. Contribution is what we sold it for, less what it cost us. What's the cost of selling one extra bag of food? It's the cost of the bag of food. It doesn't cost you any more. You've not had to have the practice open for a minute longer. You've not paid a member of staff a penny more. Selling one extra bag of food, the contribution is the difference between what it cost you to buy it and what you just sold it for. If your vet sat there, only utilised 50% of the time, and you do one extra consult, what's the cost of that consult? Nothing. You spent the money anyway. So the contribution is everything. So when we think about what's the contribution of a plan, we have to think about it in the terms of what our cost structure is. If our vets are sat there with spare time, then the plan can fill that time. As Janine said, and as the figures showed, when they're in, we'll talk to them about lots of things. Some of those things will result in sales. The contribution from those sales is better than the nothing you were going to get with the vet sat there with nothing to do. Isn't it? Even €1 is better than nothing. So we need to think in contribution terms. We've seen that members triple their spend. So you've got a lot of contribution to play with. So don't be afraid. 10% might be the right number. The more attractive you can make it, what we seem to be seeing now in studies we're doing at the moment is that if the clients think the plan's good value, they're more likely to buy other services because they'll perceive those to be good value too. It's about using the plan to position yourself correctly on the scale so your clients are getting what they expect from you. And then they're more likely to accept future recommendations. And work up the total contribution on the proposals you've got. Look at what difference it makes. And then think about what it's worth. It's interesting that in the UK, most practices for their canines will have a series of prices depending on the weight of the pet. Because obviously the heavier the pet, the more parasite control it requires. And then we come to the supersized dog. So most of them have little dogs. Then they have medium-sized dogs, they have bigger dogs, and then they come to the supersized dog, the 40 kilo plus dog. And usually you find that when you work the costs out for the 40 kilo plus, it's a very big sum of money. They're very big dogs, aren't they? But I know practices that don't have a supersized dog. Because what they say is, I love supersized dogs. The contribution from a supersized dog over its life is fantastic. They have the most incredible things go wrong with them. They're going to be fantastic patients for us. And so they say, if we lose money on our pet health plan to supersized dogs, we don't care. If it means somebody brings their supersized dog to our clinic because our pet health plan is the cheapest, let them come. Because I know the contribution I'm going to get off that dog over the next 5 or 7 years. So think about, again, positioning your practice. Who are your clients? Who are you trying to attract? It's quite a complex thing to get your head round. But that'll help you determine the kind of plan you want right for you and your clients and where to price it in relation to everything else. And then we have to promote it. So, you need leaflets, we need posters, we need waiting room displays. We need stuff to support the work we're going to do communicating it to a client. But the most important communication is what we say to them. So you can use your website. How do they join? Well, usually there's a paper form because there's a direct debit or something to fill in. So they can do that in your clinic. But how else can they join? Can they join from home? Can you make it accessible to them? So can they post the form to you? If you're using a third-party provider, this is often the service they provide. Can they ring you up and do it? Can they ring somebody else up and do it? Can you create online forms? Here's a village vet, so you can buy their plan online. Just click on the dog you've got. See here, they've got 4. I know one of their competitors only got 3 because they want their big dogs. But can they do it? So these people can. So think about making your plan accessible. Recognize that for many clients it's quite a big decision. They're not going to say yes when they're in front of you. They're going to want to go away and think about it. So how do you follow that up? Do you make a note? Do you put a reminder on your system? Does somebody call them, like Banfield do, in a few days' time? Give them time to read it. What other questions have they got? Did you really understand it? Can we help you with more information? Recognize the value to you of this investment in time. And Jeffrey was talking to me last night. He was talking about the fact that we tend to be transaction-based. It's what we can do today. We've got to become lifetime-based. We've got to think about the value of this relationship over time. How much are you prepared to invest now to get that relationship going? Yes, it takes time to sell pet health plans. Everybody has to invest in that time. But what we can see is it's worth it. But you don't get the rewards if you don't invest the time. You've got to invest the effort. So, not only get them registered, then the client's got to use it. You've got to have a reminder system in place that makes sure they come and use the plan benefits. Because if in a year's time they've paid every month but forgotten to come in, whose fault will that be? Will it be theirs for forgetting to come in? It'll be yours. You ripped me off. You've taken this money from me all year and you've given me nothing. So you have to have reminders in place that chase clients down. So monthly for flea control, email, text message, quarterly for worming, whatever it is, 6 months for the health check. If they don't come, we should be chasing them. We're helping them take responsibility for their pet. If they've forgotten, we don't. We've got a computer, use it. You've got members of staff, use them. Email, text, phone, letter, postcard, doesn't matter. Use the drug company services, whatever it takes, make sure they come. Communicate with this group. They've told you something about themselves. They've told you we really care about our pet, so tell them other stuff. Give them their own newsletter. Make them feel special. It's a subgroup of your clients, a special group of your clients. Make them feel like a special group. Put events on just for them. That's what the stores do, isn't it? You have a store card, they send you special events just for you because you're special. Make them feel special. And think about a specialist members section on your website. Again, something only they get access to. It's a privilege to be a member. Make them feel privileged. But don't forget the people. It's all about the team. Too often we leave the preventative message to the veterinary surgeon and we leave the promotion of the plan to the rest of the team. It has to be a team effort. Same message as Banfields. Everybody in the team has to play their part. The main factor is this collective action. Everyone's got to do it. Your promotional materials support what you say. They don't sell the plan. You sell the plan. Your team sells the plan. Personal recommendation sells the plan. Studies have shown with Denplan, when you ask a client why did they join, it's because the vet and the vet team asked me to. They told me to. They said I'd be daft if I didn't. It was a clear recommendation. It's what we expect you to do. You're going to be a responsible pet owner, aren't you? Of course I am. Well, this is what you need to do. Are you going to do it? Of course I'm going to do it. That's what it has to come from. Your passion igniting their passion. Be clear about what you're recommending. That's why it's so important. Your team won't get passionate if they don't agree with the plan. If the parasite control protocol isn't the one they would personally use, they'll have a problem with it. You've got to sort that out first. It takes time in practices to get everybody on board. So, practice-wide commitment. It's about preventive health. It's what we do. I love Jeffrey's phrase, every cat, every dog, every day. The owners have got to live, breathe and sleep it. So everybody knows it's coming from you. The support and input of your key staff, you've got to be sure about. If you're not, sort it out. The plan's benefits have got to be clear to everybody. Everyone's got to understand why. And staff have to have support, either from somebody in the practice that's champion or a third party if you're using a third party. But somebody who's going to keep the pressure going. Why is that important? Well, we know that once we've launched a plan, it gets harder. So we've got to get the design right, we've got to prepare for launch, we've got to get the team on board, we've got to plan how to support, but then we've got to keep doing it. This graph from Denplan shows the recruitment rate. And what we can see, 3 different practices, starts with great enthusiasm, starts to tail off. What happened here? What happened here is everyone got back together again, everyone talked about what had happened, what the problems we're having, how can we overcome those problems, what's the message we want to say, but the plan was reinvigorated, because if we didn't do that at 3 or 4 months, it would have just done that. It would have become last year's good idea. So as we saw on that other recruitment graph, you've got to keep the message going, you've got to keep the support in place. Successful plan, well, common goal and purpose. It's got to be at the heart of what you do. It's got to be based on your clients. You've got to know your clients, know your patients, build a plan that meets their needs. So the right plan, and if you use one at the right provider for your practice, You've got to make effective use of your time and resources and work together as a team. But if you do, it can be hugely rewarding. And we need to communicate. And that's me done.